It's Friday, and I'm back with the next in our Fanzine Friday series. Today we're taking a look at the Aerial Servant number 3. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer. This is our channel, Old School Rules, where we celebrate the community of old school gamers and grognards who like classic RPGs, miniatures, magazines, and everything that goes with it. Each week on the Fanzine Friday series, I take a fanzine from my collection off the shelf for a closer look. And today from 1980, this is the Aerial Servant number 3. Hope you enjoy the video. We're continuing our look at this fanzine from the UK, the product of Simon Kirby and Matt Hankins, and it's called the Aerial Servant. It's magazine size, sort of the UK, slightly longer pages, magazine sized. This one has heavy stock cover, and they proudly announced that in paper, stapled in half. And again, we're just looking at 32 pages for this one. Taking a look here at the cover, they mention they're going to have something for D&D, they focus on postal games and Traveller and more. 50 pence, and here's a closer look at the artwork. This one's not labeled, although they do give attribution to their artists in here. Generally, Richard Knights, Adrian Wheeler, Mark Pillinger, and Keir Watson. So I'm not sure which one of those guys actually did the cover. Let's talk about the contents. We have an editorial, Spawn Pit, which is new monsters, Helm and Hail, which is something by a Graham Staplehurst wanting to create a supplement for a city. Talk more about that. Travelin', which is their Traveller article, Merlin's Pantry, new magic items. Quest for the Book of Minions, that's the D&D adventure. A Story, which is fan fiction. Reviews, TSR News. U1, Strangers on Miriam, which is a Traveller adventure. Electric Zygote, which is their play-by-mail section, and the results of their questionnaire from the readers, what they liked. In terms of who participated here, we have, of course, Simon and Matthew, Steve Cullis, Graham Askey, Dave Davies, Keir Watson, given some credit in the beginning, and also Nick Baber, Iain Armstrong, Richard Knights, Adrian Wheeler, Mark Pillinger, and I think it's Edward Bowen, and Graham Staplehurst. You may recognize some of those names. Several of these guys have participated in a few different fanzines. In terms of their editorial, their real focus this time is the improvements to the magazine. As I said, the heavy stock, cardstock cover now, and they do mention that the Electric Zygote, their play-by-mail section, is starting to sort of lose support or enthusiasm. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to it. The Spawn Pit, these are their new monsters, and the first one here is the Hill Studs. Not sure where this came from. Nick Baber is the creator. They're basically humanoids with yellow or reddish brown skin. They can throw small boulders and basically just look like, I'd say, a small version of a hill giant, kind of what it reminded me of. Next we have the Tsunami by Graham Staplehurst. This is a white-cloaked hobbit, and essentially they're little tiny dudes who run around, and they're very lawful, and they will heal. They'll heal anybody, no matter what their alignment would be. They can lay on hands 5 times a day, and they cure as many hit points as they personally have. And then once a day, they can cast other healing spells like cure disease, cure blindness, neutralize poison, or create food and water. And they can also haste themselves and turn themselves invisible to animals once every turn. And they're basically little peacekeepers. I'm not sure what the inspiration for these little guys was. Graham has another monster called the Atvarus. And the Atvarus is a little 3-foot-tall bird from the plane of fire, and it basically flies around. It says oddly here, they can only be killed by mistake, and that's up to the DM to figure out. I don't really understand how you're going to get killed by mistake. They will befriend chaotic good or chaotic neutral magic users, druids, or illusionists, and they can communicate within 48 feet by telepathy, and they can share their 25% magic resistance with someone that they have befriended. They can dimension door once a day, produce flame, invisibility, and make themselves only 1% of their normal weight, so that they're sort of weightless. They also have the ability to hit creatures that can only be struck by magic weapons, 1+2+, or even +3. So, a little bit interesting. I guess the befriending part might make it an interesting encounter. So this next one is called the Jackal Fang. We actually have some art for this one. And it's sort of like a velociraptor, from my read of it. Vicious creature, it attacks anything that it comes across. It can hunt in a pack of 1 to 8. They can jump and hook you with the big fangs in the front, and they can use their little fanged arms to scratch you as well. And then, of course, once they get their fangs into you, they'll chomp you with their jaws also. Pretty fearsome. Then we have, and that's a combination of Simon Kirby, Dave Davies, Mark Pillinger, and Mark does the artwork there. Then we have Graham Staplehurst again with the Hoopy, I think it's called, the greedy and treasure-loving bird that will lair in inaccessible treetops, mountain caves, etc., and it will secret away all of its treasures. They will swallow and fly away with their treasure, baubles, gems, and coins, up to 500 gold pieces in weight. That's quite the bird. But they can fan out their tail feathers and sort of cause you to become charmed or stunned, and you'll just sort of stand there confused while they either attack you or get away. The next creature is the Ursians, which are basically standing bear-like creatures. Make me kind of think of Ewoks, but they're about 6 feet tall. They can use certain weapons. They're not necessarily hostile, but they don't want anyone to come and be inside of their forest, not even a druid. And then finally we have the jungle slime. Looks a little bit the color of a gray ooze. It can camouflage itself in though on the jungle if it's not moving, and then it'll sort of like plop up and try to hit you and engulf you. Anything up to 20 feet away they can hit with their sort of springing or blobbing attack. If they get a 17 to a 20 roll, then they will get, that means they've gotten themselves wrapped all the way around the character, and they'll begin to dissolve you. They don't do damage to metal or stone, only to flesh. So I think they would probably, if they're semi-sentient, they would probably try to come after people who didn't have metal armor. I'm not sure what you would do if you found someone with metal armor, if you would either have this DM decide they could ooze their way through that, or else you would have to decide they maybe couldn't get in and do any damage to someone wearing metal armor. Okay. Next, this is Graham Staplehurst's sort of big idea called Helm and Hail. In Graham Staplehurst, he's got grand ideas. You may remember this from my other fanzine video here, Beholder number 21. He had an advertisement in here for this as well. And I made mention what his idea was. He's going to create sort of like the city-state of the Invincible Overlord, but according to him, much, much better product. And one of the things he's doing here is actually now asking for you, the reader, to send in your ideas. Send me an idea for a shop with a shopkeeper. Send me an idea for a temple and the people that are at that temple. And he's going to piece all these ideas together and create this campaign world, or a campaign city setting for you to use. I don't think this ever happens. It's a very ambitious idea, and I will say the shade thrown at the city-state of the Invincible Overlord is undeserved. That's a fantastic setting, and I don't know why anyone would think that they needed to go out and claim that they were going to make something better, because that wasn't, just wasn't good enough, right? I'm a big fan of that product. It's really, really good. If you don't have a copy, I've done a video on the city-state of the Invincible Overlord product that came out from Judges Guild. You can take a look at that. I mean, and if you don't have a copy, see if you can find a copy. It's really, really cool. It has these great maps and a lot of detail about a city. And let me tell you, when you look at it, I mean, it's a lot of work to do something that scale. And I think Graham's idea here was just a little too ambitious, probably. Traveling for Traveler, and this is Starship Combat. Merlin's Pantry, we have new magic items here. We have the Woodland Figurine, which is essentially a hunting dog, and it can be used by a druid or a ranger, and it can detect obviously different scents. It can create food and water once a week. It can detect snares and pits. It can purify your food and water for you, and basically just makes a nice little sort of familiar for a druid or a ranger, and that's by Graham Askey. He also has the Cubes of Enchantment. Don't like this one. It's kind of nasty. These are little cubes of flesh prepared by a priestly sect that does human sacrifice. So that's where the flesh came from. You'll find one or two of them. Depending on your alignment, depends on your effects. If you are evil, like the people who created them, it'll act as a cure light wounds spell. It may provide you the benefits of not having to have food or water for a couple of weeks, and it may increase one of your characteristics by 1 point. And if you're really lucky, then it may actually have you create a relationship where you get to interact with your deity. If you're neutral and you don't participate in human sacrifice, then 40% of the time it'll affect you as it will a good person. 40% of the time, as it does, it'll have no effect. And then if you're a good person, 50% of the time when you eat this, it'll cause a curse. 25% of the time it'll cause a disease. It might cause a withering spell or a slay living spell. So it's going to have a really, really ugly effect on you if you're a good line character. But if you're a good line character, what are you doing eating cubes of human flesh in the first place? Then finally we have a spell by Matthew Hankins, which I like. It is a second level cleric spell called Moonlight. And it essentially creates light, but a silvery, softer light like that of the moon rather than the harsher light of the sun. And its special effect is if it shines on someone who is subject to lycanthropy, it'll cause them to change into their were-creature form. So that's kind of a cool spell. All right, here is our adventure. It is called the Book, Quest for the Book of the Minions. And here's our map. What I like about it is it's a pretty simple little quest. It's a pretty interesting dungeon. You can see it's not very big. It has some interesting little traps and puzzles, things you're going to have to figure out as you work your way through it. Not horribly challenging. They say this is really geared for first level characters. Maybe a smaller party of second level characters would be appropriate for this one. The thing that I found sort of interesting about it, if you make it sort of linear, right? If you make it to the end, you find the Book of Minions, and the lore they tell you about this. 900 years ago, there lived the sage Viserant Zoom, who devoted his life to the study of divine beings that had come to the earth. This was completed the year before his death, and then guarded by a renowned historian, and then his son. But then some thieves stole it. One killed the other and then fled. The last we knew, the thief had been killed, and the book had fallen into the hands of the faceless one known as Gorogoth. And so someone now has figured out where the location is, and you're being sent to retrieve it. And essentially, he's just gathered this history. And so what's odd about it to me is, like, you would think, like, oh, I'm so proud to have found this book. It's worth a couple thousand gold pieces. There's nothing your character would ever want to do with this book but sell it. There's no magic user benefit to it. There's no sort of, you could be creative and create some type of a quest in it, but it's basically just a book of history of different deities and their interactions with mortals when they've come to the prime material plane. So again, I give it good marks in terms of dungeon design. It's creative, it's interesting. It's clearly going to be not even a full session, I don't think, for your characters. But the big prize at the end is a little, for me, it read like it would probably be a little bit of a letdown for the characters, although they are kind enough to throw a few magic items into the horde in addition to just finding the book itself. So that's probably okay for the characters. Then we have a story. This is Matthew Hankins' continuation of the story that appears in each episode, the tale of a Lentilla the Archer and Odrogus the Paladin. We have some reviews. This is again focused on D&D and TSR. And so the World of Greyhawk has come out. This is the folio size, which makes me think this issue probably comes out in 1980, which is when that did. Has the two large maps done by Darlene, which are really iconic, pieces of the World of Greyhawk. And all in all, they said this is really good because it's so big, there's so much information, and if for a dungeon master to try and recreate this for him or herself, here's just saying, like, that'd be so much work, and this will save you so much time, and it's a really good setting. The next thing they have is the Deities and Demi-Gods hardbound book. And again, they really like this. They say it's a huge improvement over when the original brown box and white box had the book that came out, which is okay, but this is obviously much better. Not only is the book itself better, but it has fantastic artwork from a number of the artists at TSR. And again, they like it quite a bit. I think anyone who likes old school D&D definitely should have a copy of this in your collection. And obviously, if you know much about collecting, you know that the first couple of printings had two pantheons, the Cthulhu and the Melnibonian mythos, that are removed due to some copyright IP issues and some decisions at TSR not to want to help somebody else's IP game by including it here, right? It's a whole other story. And they also have a Gamma World adventure called Research Station Gamma that they took a look at. They also have even more information or news from TSR. These are upcoming or recently released items, and they tell you a little bit more about them. Q1, Queen of the Demon Web Pits, perhaps the toughest module to date, they say, even harder than Tomb of Horrors and Vault of the Drow. For characters level 10 to 14, and of course they mentioned that crazy map of the Demon Web. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. S3, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, as they say, the strong science fantasy overtone. This is the adventure module where a spaceship has crash landed on Greyhawk. And that was kind of a common view of how the game existed, or the world in which you existed, right? There could be this blend of science and fantasy. A lot of people don't particularly like that. I think some people love this adventure, S3, and some people really, it's one of their least favorite. So, A1, Slave Pit of the Undercity, with great Slavers City modules. It's come out, and they said next spring we expect to see A2. Maybe even comes out as soon as Christmas. And then the most important product they want to talk about in the UK is that the Fiend Folio is going to come out. Hasn't come out yet, but they mentioned it's under contract, and Games Workshop has mentioned that they're helping put that together in the UK. And then module C2 is supposed to be out. That's Ghost Towers of Inverness, is supposed to be out in February of 1981. And then finally, they say the D&D Expert Set, this is the Moldvay Cook box sets, should be out before Christmas, but then again, of course, it might not. But then I mentioned, obviously, it builds on top of the basic set that's already out there, and that it will contain an adventure module called X1 Isle of Dread. There are a couple sales announcements here, people who are selling their own games and books, but not particularly interesting. All right, so this, don't normally talk about Traveller, but I want to talk about this because of what it is. So this is called U1 Strangers on Miriam, and it is an outline for multiple scenarios, I guess is the right way to say it. So here's this map of the factory and the wilderness. I'd probably put them in an opposite order, but that's okay. So you've got this wilderness area, and inside the wilderness area is this factory. And what I thought is really interesting about what they did here, it's not, first off, it's not a completely fleshed out like a module in terms of the detail. It's ideas and kernels that you would build around. And what I thought was particularly interesting about this, they're like, here again, because here's the wilderness map, and then here's the factory, right? And what they say is, okay, this is actually 7 different ideas you could have and use this for. So you sort of could pick one, you could play it again, same 2 maps with a completely different idea. So like the first one, the characters are scouts employed to come here, get inside the factory, and steal some plans. The second idea, the Vargur inhabitation. War loomed over the planet. The factory was closed down. It's been reopened, but a small colony of these creatures called Vargur have inhabited it. So your mission is to go to the factory and try and kill as many of those Vargur as you can. Next idea. After a long strike, the rice factory has been reopened and work has started until workers have started going missing. The corporation that owns the factory has hired you to come in, find and kill whatever monster is causing the workers to disappear. Next idea, the Forgotten Machine. The war is over. The defeated Imperial fleet is scattered. A ship has crashed on this planet. You find a deserted factory controlled by robots. And maybe you got to use the factory or something at the factory to get yourself off the planet. I'm just adding that in. Attack on the factory. The ape empire has chosen you to lead a large army of unskilled apes and try and take over this factory. And then battle for the planet of the apes. The factory has fallen into ape control, and now the corporation that owned the factory hires you to go in and clear them out and return control to them. And then finally, one called The Computer Has Gone Berserk. the computer that helps control and run the factory has gone berserk and causing most of the workers to end up dead. You have to be sent in, and now you're going to fight against the robots and the computer itself to try and destroy it or disable the computer so it's safe to go back into the factory. Again, what I thought was really neat about this as a concept was the idea of this simple design and then giving the DM these different ideas they could use. Like here's the building, right, in the scenario, and a little bit of information about the planet, etc. But you can choose and pick and do one or more of these adventure settings in there. That's a really, really cool idea. Okay, the Electric Zygote is their play-by-mail section. And as they say, I see the novelty of postal gaming has worn off, and several people realize how much time it takes, and they're basically not interested. Nonetheless, they continue to encourage people to say, but sort of we think you're wrong, your instincts or reactions are wrong. This is really fun. Come on, we need you to participate. You'll see in the next issue, the trend continues. And it kind of, this gaming for all the interesting ideas and enthusiasm they had is going to kind of peter out. And then finally on the back page, they have the results to the reader survey that was on issue number 2. They asked a number of questions, and they said, what do you like? Interestingly, given what I just said, the favorite thing in both issue 1 and 2 from the reader response was the Electric Zygote. So we like the section. We're just not going to play your games. Or maybe the problem is and I wonder about this, they had too many games. And so they had enough people for 1 or 2, but maybe they spread them across 3, 4, 5 different, they had more than that, possible games. And so they didn't get a critical mass for any one game. I don't know. So maybe they had a good idea and they just didn't execute it right because they were too ambitious. Can't say. People liked it. In issue 1, they liked the Traveler, the fiction story, the magic items, the adventure layer of the Sea Demon, encounters for Metamorphosis Alpha, Dragon Lord character class. That probably was one of my favorite things. The merchant tables and the TSR news. And then issue 2, Electric Zygote again. And then the Laughing Realm, which was the adventure, the Traveler article, the Spirits, monsters for D&D, Knights of the Second Imperium, which was for how to bring Jedi to Traveler, the reviews, the fiction story, and the Dragon Lord. So the Dragon Lord's not getting a lot of love either time. And then they ranked which monsters did you like? They liked the Voshe, the Nightwalker, and the Xanax from the second one were their favorites. And then they liked the Molten Elemental, Golem, Spiderhawk, Coffin Worm, and Cyborg, or Goborg, kind of a cyborg in the first one. So that's what they liked about that one. What games that people wanted to see covered? D&D, 64%, so they're about right when they said they wanted this to be about a 60% D&D magazine, 15% for Traveler, and then just a smattering of people for Chivalry and Sorcery, Gamma World, Superheroes, Metamorphosis Alpha, Boot Hill, or other. And then what fanzines did they like? That's always kind of interest to me. So White Dwarf was first, then The Beholder, which we just got done talking about for the last several weeks, Troll Crusher, Demon's Blood, Dragon, The Wanderer, Stormlords, what they laugh about. I don't know what they had a little something going on with Stormlords there. And then finally the Dungeoneer, which is actually a fantastic fanzine, although by this time I think it's been well over into the Judges Guild year, so maybe it's not as good as it was back when Jaquays first started that. Here's a little bit of art. Some of this stuff is signed, some of it's not. We've got a spaceship and a robot here from the Traveler Adventure, and then just some random art by different people in there. We got this guy, sort of looks like a druid or a very thoughtful cleric, this dragon creature down here at the bottom, a snake creature maybe, and then this really silly looking guy with the big teeth up here at the top. That's our look at the Aerial Servant number 3. There are 4 of these, so we've got one more to go, and then we'll move on to, I think we'll go to the New Beholder, right, which is where these magazines, the Beholder and the Aerial Servant, this guy Nick Scales, who didn't produce either one of them, somehow gets a hold of both of them, I guess acquires them, puts them together, does his own creation, which is called the Beholder. A lot of people call it the New Beholder because it's a different sort of concept. So I think we'll do it that first, and that way we sort of round out the history here that's all interconnected. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Hope you enjoyed the series, and I hope you're subscribed. If you have friends who might enjoy our content, please send them our way. We're still trying to build up our subscriber base. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. And until next time, my friends, keep rolling 20s.